the beginning of page 104, continuing with the four mind changings in karma. The root or basis for accomplishing the sacred dharma of emancipation is to correctly abandon evil deeds and adopt virtuous actions with trust in the Buddha's teachings about the ripening of the effect of intended mental and enacted physical or verbal actions. As described in the jewel garland, attachment, anger, and delusion, and the actions created by them are unvirtuous. From non-virtue comes suffering, and likewise all evil states, non-attachment, non-anger, and non-delusion, and the actions created by them are virtuous. From virtue comes all the happy states and happiness in all rebirths. The 10 evil and unvirtuous actions of the three doors, as well as their sub-aspects motivated by the disturbing emotions in great amounts, will result in the hells, in middling amounts in the worlds of hungry ghosts, and in small amounts in the animal realms. Thus they make you go to the three lower realms and be tormented by intense miseries. So is this some kind of punishment for what you're doing? No. This is the result of the world that you project and see based on your karmic vision. So when you relate to the world through the three poisons, because they are distortions of reality, then your habit of perception moves in the direction of creating a realm around that poison. And that is what manifests as these different realms. Within the human world, there's, of course, the spectrum of different kinds of experiences. But then when you take on a new body, because you detach from the earth element in a strong way, like so that our body, our bodily karma, holds us with a heavy amount of earth element that keeps us from moving so quickly with our karma. But when we are in the bardo, we only have the mind, then the moment you think of something, it immediately happens, right? So you can think of the Alps and you'll be in the Alps. So whatever karmic tendencies you have accrued during this lifetime will then come to fruition very quickly, especially whatever you comes to mind in that moment of death. And then you can manifest basically a projection of the realm that you are tapping into, and that will connect you to other beings who are also connecting to that. And then your desire to take on a body will make you attracted to a person of the opposite sex who are copulating, and then you will enter into the womb of that being, and that's how the process of rebirth happens. This is all kind of like at a dreamlike level, right? So this is just the mind, but the connection through interdependence with these other beings and the poison that is coloring your experience causes you to join into a shared karmic vision of one of the six realms. So right now we joined into the human realm and we have the shared human karmic vision, which allows us to see the things we see, like rivers and mountains and trees, and all of this is part of our shared karmic vision. But if you have, an excess of one of the poisons, then you perceive things differently. Like a hell being sees water as fire or lava. Hungry ghosts see it as like mucus or feces. The gods see it as nectar, right? So your karma changes how you see the five colored lights, and therefore how you see the five elements, thus generating a perception on that basis. So that's what's happening when you do this. And it's happening moment to moment. But as I said, your karma in your body, in the current heavier amount of earth element, makes it so that that doesn't happen so quickly, thank goodness. And this is one of the benefits of having a human birth, is that we are able to be more thoughtful and intelligent about our actions, and we can create positive virtue and avoid negative, and we can purify negative things that we've done, and we can rejoice in positive things we've done, and thus set ourselves up for better and better conditions in this life and in the next. By committing the 10 virtuous actions that are in accord with the merit, as well as by performing their sub-aspects, you will reborn in the higher realms and experience pleasant results. By performing the virtuous actions embraced by renunciation or bodhicitta that are in harmony with emancipation, you will attain one of the three types of emancipation. So what this is talking about is, so there's regular old virtue. When you do something positive, that will produce a positive result. So if you're generous, then you will have more material goods come to you. But that is just ordinary level virtue, and that will result in the higher realms at the moment of death. If you developed a lot of virtue by itself, then you will just be reborn in a higher rebirth. But that's not what we want, because the higher realms, the higher than the human realms, are even more seductive and dangerous for a lot of ways, as I've talked about before. So, what we need to do is link our virtue up with bodhicitta. This is the desire to attain complete and total Buddhahood and to bring all sentient beings with us. When we do this, it creates a special kind of virtue that does not diminish and does not result in the eight worldly concerns: pain, pleasure, fame, gain, etc. Um, so what we want to do is make sure that before we do a virtuous action, if we can, we take refuge and we generate the mind that we are doing this positive deed so that we can progress towards Buddhahood and a pure land and attain liberation and bring all sentient beings with us. And then we do the action with as little attachment as possible. And then at the end, we dedicate the merit, making sure to release it to all sentient beings. This makes sure that it does not result in the eight worldly concerns and becomes a cause for liberation. So we're working to develop that. So according to the Sutra of the King of Samadhi, committed actions never disappear. They ripen in samsara into white or black results. So what this is saying is when it's attached to bodhicitta, you're combining your merit with the Buddha's merit, and then it never is lost. It helps lead you to enlightenment. But when you have a good deed without this kind of dedication and desire to be liberated, then it just results in some kind of positive result. And as soon as you experience a positive result, it's gone. So thus the ripening of actions never fails, and the effects of virtue and evil deeds will unmistakably ripen upon the doer. Since karmas can be increased, even a small can yield a large result. The formerly committed misdeeds, along with their sub-aspects that can be divided into four types of impelling and completing, performed and accumulated, should therefore be confessed before a sublime object. With determination, make the wholehearted vow henceforth to not commit them again. You must joyfully undertake the roots of virtue as well as their sub-aspects, even to the tiniest, with great endeavor and without belittling them. And we talked last time about the four powers. This is that we have to use an object of confession, which is usually Vajrasattva. We need to confess our misdeed. Then we have to do some kind of activity to purify it. In this case, it would be to recite the Vajrasattva mantra and do the visualization. And then we have to vow to never repeat this. This is how we antidote karma that we've already performed. And karma has different levels of power depending on these factors. So an activity that is done without any thought, forethought, or intention has less karmic weight than an action that you intend to do and then you do it. And then after you've completed it, if you rejoice in having done it, that increases the karma further. If you regret having doing it, it will bring the karmic load down. So this is how we work with our actions, right? When we are in the state, our natural state, in the nature of mind, then we are not messing with this dream. We are in a state in which action is spontaneous and we are not grasping or attached to experience in any way whatsoever. And then all of our experience, sound, and colors, etc., are all already spontaneous, liberated Buddha light, right? They're just the display of the nature of mind. But when we engage with the appearances, with the feeling of I and other, which we do most of the time, we are generating karma. And so this is why we need to practice, Dzogchen as much as possible to be in the nature of mind and not create karma. In this case, the water will settle, and we'll allow our karmic misdeeds to karma to settle. But if we do positive acts, then like I said last time, it's like throwing pebbles into the water. They sink quickly, and they're able. You can get right back to your practice. But if you do negative deeds, it's like putting charcoal dust in your water, and it takes a longer time for those to settle and takes more work to remove them. So this is the real reason behind virtue. This isn't like good and bad and some moralistic, based on a God kind of perception. This is based on how they affect our mind, based on how close to truth it is. Because the truth is everything is interdependent. And when we know that, then we would never do harmful actions. But when we don't know that, then we do harmful deeds because we think we need to work for ourselves and not for others, right? So that feeling of I is stronger in non-virtue than it is in virtue. But the real aim is to be free from karma altogether. But because most of us are not on retreat or monastics, we are continuously committing karmic deeds. So we want to make sure we're doing as much positive karma as possible and avoiding negative karma. The conditioned and general virtuous actions of prostrating to and circumambulating the representations of the precious ones will purify chiefly the misdeeds of the three kinds of physical non-virtues. So there's different kinds of karma. There's body karma, speech karma, and mind karma. So prostrations, circumambulations, these things are excellent for purifying negative deeds done with the body. Mantras, recitation of sutras, etc., for purifying the speech, and then mentally practiced mantras, meditation, visualization. These things purify, and obviously resting in the nature mind, purify the mind. So we need to work at all these levels. Reciting incantations and essence mantras and reading of sutras of the words of the victorious one and the profound tantras will chiefly purify the obscurations of the four kinds of verbal non-virtues. Turning your thoughts onto the path of virtues, such as supplicating the three jewels and three roots, having right view, motivated by admiring, devotion, yearning, faith, with trusting faith, will chiefly purify the faults of the three kinds of mental non-virtues. So attitude of bodhicitta, loving kindness, the four immeasurables, devotion, all of these things help purify the mind stream. Both virtue and evil depend on your attitude, as the clouds of precious jewels states all virtuous and all unvirtuous actions are created by the mind. Therefore, strive to control your mind at all times. Shantideva taught how all who desire to control their minds should guard themselves with effort at all times through being mindful and conscientious. I will join my palms for that. This is the main thing that we have to be up to as practitioners. We have to be like a sentinel at our own mind. This is what mindfulness is about. We're mindful of what's happening in our mind at all times. Is it good deeds? Is it good thoughts, bad thoughts? Is it recognition, non-recognition? This mindfulness and awareness about our state of mind. We have to act, he says, and Shantideva says, like, imagine that you were carrying a bowl of oil and a man behind you with a sword was waiting. And if you drop one drop, he'll cut your head off, right? So we need to be like that with our mind. We're holding how much more dangerous we could lose our head, but our karmic misdeeds can lead us to hell. So we need to have meticulous mindfulness and introspective vigilance towards our mental state at all times so that we prevent the accumulation of more non-virtue. Thus, always train yourself correctly in being mindful, which means an unwavering, watchful attitude, in being conscientious, which means to notice whether or not faults have arisen in your stream of being, and in being careful, which means to be cautious about what should be done or avoided in any action. And this is what is really helpful to study the sutras, because we don't always know what is good and what is bad. And the sutras can help us to understand that, because some of these things are subtle. But as I've said before, our main objective is to eliminate karmic activity, which means that we need to minimize activity in general. This is why the lamas all generally encourage us to spend as much time sitting as possible, because you're not committing negative karma, right? The times you're sitting reciting sutras or in meditation, you're much safer from creating negative karma, etc. And so that's why it's beneficial. The stages of the path common for people of medium capacity. This has two parts: how to train your attitude and the measure of having trained. The how to train your attitude. The Lamar Mission Ningpo root text says, in particular, for accomplishing the state of emancipation with the recognition and remembrance that all of samsara is like a fiery pit, a garden of razors, or a forest of swords, arouse and again the intense and genuine attitude of desiring to be quickly freed from the three sufferings. We need to really, really believe and know that suffering is all that can be found in samsara. Now, does this mean in the world? No. Samsara is the world of emotional reactivity, the world of karmic engagement. This doesn't mean you need to reject life. It means you need to reject attachment, aggression, and ignorance, and the world that creates. So it's a special kind of world. But in a moment of recognition, the world is just lights, sounds, and rays. So the perception here that we're trying to realize that wealth, fame, pleasure, all these things do not work. They do not bring satisfaction. They either don't bring it at all, or they bring it and then you quickly lose it and you can't keep it, or they cause harm in some way directly. So there is nothing, as we should spend time thinking about the highest states we can imagine of happiness in this world and how that no one escapes birth, old age, sickness, death, loss. That when you get pleasure, you just want more. It's like drinking salt water. That everything is unsatisfying. This is the basis. It's not so much like everything is horrible, it's that nothing is satisfactory. And this is really the mark of a Buddhist. It's somebody who knows that something is always wrong. It's all pervasive suffering. It's a feeling of the whole thing isn't right, right? Some people have a sense of this is good and this is bad, but not everybody has a sense that everything is tinged with pain and suffering and loss. And this is what the Buddha clearly saw. Um, we avoid this truth about experience. We want to believe that there is even if we don't believe it conceptually, we act as though we could achieve this perfect equilibrium of pleasure, happiness, good situation, a good house, enough free time, good friends, good food, and we will be totally satisfied. And so it's like even if we achieve something even kind of like this, how long will it last? Before long, the diagnosis comes, the friend passes, the house fire happens. There's always something. So as Buddhists, we don't wait to be shocked by those things. We recognize that this is the end result of all of these paths within the samsaric world, that none of them lead to happiness. The conceptions common for the people of lesser capacity are indeed a correct view, but in order to attain what is superior to that, the state of unexcelled emancipation and peace, the attitude of renouncing all of samsara is essential. The characteristics of samsara are described in the scripture on discernment. As filth has no sweet fragrance, the six kinds of beings have no happiness. As there is no coolness in a fiery pit, the states of existence have no joy. No matter where you are reborn within the higher or lower realms of existence, there is an exclusively painful quality, like staying naked in a pit of fire, walking barefoot in a garden of sharp razors, or climbing undressed in a forest of swords. A sutra describes the nature of samsara. Due to craving, becoming, and ignorance, all beings helplessly circle through the five kinds of transmigration, among humans, gods, and in the three lower realms, just like the spinning of a potter's wheel. Since we, in this way, circle without beginning or end, first understand this fact and then continuously motivate yourself with unwavering mindfulness. The sufferings of samsara can be condensed into the following three types. So we need to recognize that our feeling of I, this strong sense of self that we all have, means that as long as we believe there's a self, then we're going to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and ignore things that don't benefit us. This is the nature of having a feeling of I, which means that as long as you have a feeling of I, no matter what you try to do, you're going to be pursuing one of these, you're going to be engaged in one of these modes of being, right? Because that's what makes this self. This self becomes, that's what becoming through this grasping. And the grasping at a sense of I is the primary thing we grasp at. And then we grasp at the things that we think will help that I. And then we avoid or fight or try to kill the things that will harm this I. And we ignore the things that don't do either of those. And so this is how we wander through samsara endlessly. That's why resting in our true nature is the only actual way out. Because if we're pursuing virtue as a sense of I, then that's continuing karmic cycling, right? Because we're still trying to situate ourselves positively. This is why the practice of Tonglen is so helpful, because what is it that we're most attached to? We're most attached to our merit. We don't know that we're attached to this because most of us don't really fully believe in merit, but we are. We're attached to the merit that is the cause of our continuing ongoing well-being, right? We have, all of us humans, all of us on this call have a pretty good deal, right? Our lives are not that horrible. Even the worst of human conditions is better than most births, and especially in the United States of North America, compared to most of the world. So we have this store of merit that is producing this condition for us, and so that's part of that I feeling. It's this I know how to deal with this place and have a good time continuously. You have enough insight into good and bad that you're not making such a big mess for yourself, right? You're not actively on drugs or trying to kill somebody, right? You're not in one of those places. You kind of know how to keep things going along, okay, right? And so we're very attached to that. But our lifespan is running out. It doesn't matter where we are in our life, it's running out, and we don't know how long we have. That kind of karma we don't have insight into. So it's very stupid to rely on that kind of karma, but we're attached to this karma. So Tonglen, one of the primary things you're doing when you breathe in the black smoke and give away the white light, you're taking on negative karma and giving away your positive karma, because this deep-seated attachment and I is really bound up with your feeling of positive karma. Right? So this is a kind of cluster of things that you are attached to that you label I. And so we need to recognize that we're attached to this merit, and that merit we want to dedicate to enlightenment. We don't want to hold on to it for an ongoing positive conditions. We want to use it exclusively to the best of our ability to increase our practice. This is the only use of merit, really. We want to have good, favorable conditions in our life so that we have free time, comfort, etc., so that we can practice. This is the principle of the Pure Lands. People often wonder, why would I pursue going to a Pure Land? That seems very selfish. But a Pure Land isn't like the God realm. The Pure Lands have all these comforts, but the purpose of those comforts is only so you can attain Buddhahood. You go there and you're receiving teachings and receiving blessings and going to different practitioners and going to different Pure Lands and making offerings to the Buddhas there. You're accumulating merit and traversing the path to enlightenment very, very quickly with the intention of bringing all sentient beings into this Pure Land. You're also emanating versions of yourself eventually out into other realms to help bring beings into this Pure Land. So that's the distinct difference between the God realm and a Pure Land. The God realm does not have bodhicitta. A Pure Land is a little bit like a God realm with bodhicitta, right? So it's like a retreat. You're going there to do intensive practice in order to benefit sentient beings and attain Buddhahood quickly. Because we live in the Kali Yuga, because we live in degenerate times, it is very difficult to attain perfect enlightenment in this lifetime. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. We should try. But the truth is, if we're engaged in karmic activity all the time, that's pretty hard to do. So that's why we need to do our Pure Land aspirations and POA practice every day, because Amitabha and Shakyamuni Buddha both promised that by having faith in him and desiring to go to his Pure Land, no matter your karma, you can go. Even if you committed one of the worst deeds possible, like killing an arhat or your parents, this path is still open to you. This is the special feature of Amitabha's Pure Land. He wanted it so everybody could come. The other Pure Lands, like Tara's Pure Land and stuff, are harder to get into. You have to be on the boomies, right? So Sukhavati, Amitabha, specifically when he was a bodhisattva, aspired to make a Buddha field that was open. And so that's what this is. So we really want to focus on Amitabha and pray to him and have faith in him, because his magnetizing power, and what is Amitabha? He's the Buddha of love, right? Like, he is the magnetizing Buddha. He's the Buddha of pure love. Garchen Rinpoche is a perfect emanation of Amitabha. And so we want to think we're going to go to this field of love where we're going to practice diligently and attain Buddhahood. The sufferings of suffering means the truth of suffering is established as soon as the five perpetuating aggregates are apprehended. This means as soon as we have a sense of self, there is suffering, all pervasive suffering. And in addition, all the major sufferings then arise. This is like having boils in addition to leprosy. The main basis for these characteristics are the heat and the cold of the hell beings, the hunger and thirst of the hungry ghosts, the stupidity and muteness of the animals, but also the eight sufferings of human beings, as well as the unsatisfactory desire of the gods and the fighting of the demigods and so forth belonging to this category. So we can go through real briefly here. The heat and the cold of the hell beings have to do with anger and hatred, respectively. Anger is hot, aggressive nature, right? So when we get really, really bound up with protecting this I, then we become aggressive. We attack those we think might harm us. Hatred is a cold, tight fisted rage, right? When you ever feel like you hate somebody, it's not like flaming, punching, screaming. It's like tight and cracking. This is the cold hell, right? So the hot hell and the cold hell are produced by these kinds of anger, right? That's why this is the worst of all negative deeds are anger, and they result in these two results. Um, then there's the hunger and thirst of the hungry ghosts, and this is strong addiction, attachment, grasping, the feeling that we are missing something, and we're trying to stuff ourselves with something else to make us feel okay. Right? I am not sufficient. I need more. I need more. I need more. So greed, stinginess, these things are what lead to the hungry ghost. Stupidity and muteness of the animals is just following instinct, right? You just let the patterns run. What do the patterns have you do? Eat, sleep, defecate, mate. These things, you're just basically you're keeping your head down. A lot of animals, right? Their physiology is actually downward facing, right? Their channels and everything are aligned with the ground. They're in a kind of half conscious state. They tend to sleep a lot and spend the rest of their time in a state of extreme fear and alertness while just pursuing, like a pig with its nose in the ground, right? Just eating, 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 avoid predators, go to sleep. This is you probably know people like this, right? They're just on habitual patterns. They're not critically thinking about life or what the purpose is or whether there's any meaning in any of this. They're just trying to get the next meal and avoid not dropping dead. That's as far as their intelligence is going, right? So that leads to the animal realm. And also the eight sufferings of human beings. This is, birth, old age, sickness, and death, and then the further elaboration of that, as well as the unsatisfied desire of the gods. So the gods have a huge amount of pride, um, mixed with a lot of merit, which is basically I couldn't care less. Right? Think of very, very rich, powerful people. They're not considering what their actions are doing to others. They're engulfed in pleasure to pleasure to pleasure because they've figured out how to have sufficient merit that they can just go from pleasure to pleasure and not considering that their life will come to an end. Um, and the demigods is jealousy. So think of those who are like, low level actors who are competing with high level actors, right? And they're like never satisfied because they never get the good roles, and they're always kind of slightly pissed off. They still live in a good world, but they can't even appreciate it because they're looking at the A-list celebrities and going, why am I not on the A-list? I'm only on the B-list, and they're like competing continuously. So that's like the demigods, that kind of jealousy. And so it has a lot of merit because it has a little bit of like power behind it, but it's fundamentally this belief that I don't never have enough. And so that's the realm of jealousy creates the demigods. So we have these three kinds of suffering. The suffering of suffering, which is overt pain, right? We have the suffering of change, which is pleasure ends. And then we have all pervasive suffering of conditioning, the structural unease of conditioned existence, which is the ground of the other two. In a world in which everything is impermanent, everything is unreliable, there is a continuous state of unease. When we are grasping to an I in a world that is impermanent, then we will always feel anxious and we'll always feel slightly not okay. And that's what most of the rest of like all the rest of the other realms are attempts to avoid that feeling. And when we get into meditation, part of the reason it's so hard to practice is because we get in touch with that feeling. When we get bored and we get down to it and we just sit there, there's just this unease, right? That unease is this feeling of all pervasive suffering. So Taranata said, suffering arises from karma, karma from the kleshas from the three poisons. From the three poisons, the notion of a self. If you pull up that root, the whole tree will die. So renunciation, bodhicitta, and insight into selflessness are three angles of this nature of mind, right? This the rigpa that we've been talking about that has these qualities. It's empty yet manifest, but also has compassion. These three aspects, when we bring those together, that uproots this problem. That's why that all the good virtue in the world won't save you. All the practice in the world won't save you because it's all still done from the presumption of an I. So we're working to take this feeling of I and slowly move it in the direction of release, right? By mixing with virtue and insight, then we're dissolving it. That's how we make the ego go willingly, right? It doesn't want to go, and it won't let you just kill it, right? It has all of your patterns are designed to preserve this sense of I. The Vajrayana is amazing because of its extraordinary skillful methods for getting your ego to go along with this thing it would really not like to do, right? So every moment you visualize yourself as the deity, you're thinking of the deity and you're not thinking of I. And every moment you think of the deity is made of blessings, right? The deity is a symbolic representation of our true nature. And so it produces merit to think of the deity, to say the mantra, to do the visualization. So every moment we're doing this, we're just not paying attention to this feeling of I that we're used to fixating on. So, but your eye is kind of into it, right? Oh, I get to be this yidam, right? So it kind of is willing to go along with it. Okay, well, I'll visualize myself as Tara. I can do that. We can be Tara. And you can start to like, I'm love and I'm Tara, but you visualize yourself with like rainbow light, right? Not something solid. You don't want to make a Tara ego. That's bad news bears, right? So you want to have a light body, a body literally made of light. That is this Tara, who's made of these qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom. And you just continuously say the mantra and do this visualization, slowly letting go of this old identity that you are so attached to by replacing it with this other deity, right? This other and this new being doesn't have these characteristics of impermanence, right? Because it's based on the true nature. So through the symbolic means, we are able to get to the ultimate. And that's why then when we rest in our true nature, so we want to kind of, that's why when we even practice the yidam, we want to mix it with this recognition. And we're slowly moving towards recognition, but we need, like Lama Norsuk told Lama Joe, that you needed to do yidam practice because there needs to be a place for the blessings to land. And I think this is very profound. And I thought about it a lot. And so I think what it means is when we normally, so if we do like, I would go about my normal day and then I rest in Rigpa and then I go my normal day and I rest in Rigpa. You have two very disconnected worlds, right? You have this part of you that's in recognition and that's legitimate, but then you go back into karma and your karmic being is still basically the same. So we need to purify and accumulate this karmic being so that the two can fuse, so the blessings can land, right? So Rigpa can abide in Tara, it can't abide in you, in your ego self, right? So as we become more aligned with the Yidam, then we become more able to manifest and be in Rigpa throughout the day and throughout our lives. And then more and more, eventually, we could even start to, the Yidam would start to be inseparable from that nature. But we need something for it to land on so that it can go with us through the day, right? Because otherwise, we're going in and out, and they're staying separate. And this is also why you can run into trouble. You can have profound practice and then be an ordinary schmuck the rest of your life. We don't want this. We want the power of our practice to bleed into our day. And this is primarily done through Yidam practice and Guru Yoga, right? Through this continual, when you're thinking about the Guru, you're not thinking about the I. When you're thinking about the Yidam, you're not thinking about the I. You're letting go of this attachment. And so we allow this love affair with the Guru or with the Yidam to distract us from our usual patterning and draw us into sutra on the outside, dzogchen on the inside, right? That this is the direction we're moving towards. The dzogchen view for this Longchenpa in the Precious Treasury of the Dharma Dhatu said the six afflictions arise from Ma Rigpa. That's ignorance, right? Ma Rigpa is the ground failing to know its own face. The samsaric display is the ground's own energy, identical in substance to the five wisdoms, appearing as confusion only because it's not recognized. Passion is discerning wisdom unrecognized, what's good and what's bad. Anger is mirror like wisdom unrecognized, clarity, sharp seeing, what's helpful, what's not helpful. The, when you remove the I and the other, you just have this energy. And so the passion is the energy of knowing what is helpful. And then the energy behind anger is the energy of knowing what is harmful. And then ignorance is dharma dhatu, wisdom unrecognized. This is abiding in the ground, right? So the ignorance, when it's applied to a self who doesn't know, then it's like a cloudy animal like, right, fog of unknowing. But when you remove the self and other, then it's abiding in the ground. That this ignorance of like ultimate ignorance, right? Ignorance of no, beyond objects, beyond concepts. Renunciation is complete when what is renounced is seen as nothing other than the ground's light mistaken for something else. So instead of seeing these things as like bad, we just recognize that them for what they are, delusion, right? And we're doing something that makes no sense. We're attaching to something and expecting it to stick around when it's impermanent. We're fixating on the appearances instead of abiding as our true self. If we abide as our true self, then the appearances of the crystal can continue to change while never affecting the crystal. But we think we are in the appearances. We're stuck in the rays. We need to go back into the crystal, recognize that's our nature, and then the rays don't bother us. Then the rays become the display. They always were the display, but we didn't recognize them as that because we had lost touch with our true self, true nature, not a self. Does anybody have any questions before I continue? Okay, continuing. The suffering of change means that all samsaric happiness and splendor are impermanent and fleeting by nature, as when being suddenly crushed by sickness or enmity while living happily. All the gods and humans, though they live in seeming happiness, are not secure for long, but change and transmigrate. The all-pervasive suffering of formation means that all samsaric phenomena comprised of the five aggregates arise and cease moment to moment. Although ordinary beings do not realize that, noble beings perceive that samsaric phenomena are painful because they are always transitory formations. The Treasury commentary explains a single strand of hair lying in the palm of the hand will create discomfort and pain if it enters your eye. Immature beings, like the palm of the hand, do not realize the hair of suffering formations. Noble beings, like an eye, perceive that these formations are painful, right? It boils down to insight. It boils down to your ability to see and know what is actually happening. Ignorance is the problem. Ignorance in the English language often kind of means like just being stupid, right? Or not knowing. But really, it's ignoring, right? There's part of us that's literally not paying attention to what's going on. And these four thoughts that turn the mind toward the Dharma are four things we all ignore. We ignore that things are impermanent and change. We ignore that we have a precious, rare opportunity and we don't know how long it will last. We ignore that our actions always produce results. And we recognize, we ignore that samsara is the suffering from top to bottom. Part of us knows this, but we don't know it enough that it changes how we relate to our experience. That's why I said if you really understood the four thoughts completely, you'd be enlightened, right? Because they're all our misperceptions that cause us to do all the stuff we're doing that's keeping us locked in this illusion. If we really understood the truth of them, then we would be done in that moment. When your body and mind cannot bear the painful experiences of illness or enmity, even for one instant, how can you expect to tolerate keeping constant company with the three dreadful sufferings in the beginningless and endless realms of samsara? Thinking carefully about this, generate from the core of your heart again and again the strong attitude of wanting to be quickly liberated from these miseries with an intense yearning that is not just a temporary contrived impulse. We need to have thorough disgust with samsara. We need to really be sick of it, really done. And as I said, this doesn't mean really sick of the world or your life or whatever. This means really sick of relating to the world in this way, expecting the world to make you happy, expecting pleasurable circumstances to last, expecting things to not change. We just need to be done with it. Just so tired of it. Just exhausted. Then when that's really in us deeply, then we'll really be on the path. The Bodhicharya Avatara says, though countless Buddhas have passed away after benefiting sentient beings, due to my own demerits, I was not within the reach of healing. If I act again in the same way, it'll be like that over and over. The Vinaya scripture declares, I have taught you the means of emancipation, but exert yourselves, since emancipation depends upon yourself. No one's can get you out. You have to do the practice. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Has this been helpful? Are you um, is it changing anything for you? Are you seeing it in your life?
Um,
It makes me want to throw up.
It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard. Yeah, Vivian?
so I have a question. You talked about the hungry ghost, meaning I need more, but
Mhm.
I feel like I'm a spiritual hungry ghost.
Yeah,
Uh, if for a long, long time, like, well, ever since I was a kid, anyway, it's like I get pleasure out of being here. I don't want to
mhm.
be, I get pleasure listening to different spiritual teachers or pursuing. It isn't, it's about me. There's still me involved with this. I don't want to be out with homeless people. I want to be, like, I'd like to be in a monastery probably, but I'm married. But, like
Yeah,
I, in a, so I don't, I think, because I identify with a spiritual person and love it, I feel hungry for more and more instead of just resting with what is.
yeah,
You know, you know, going to Bhutan and doing this whole, there's all this stuff that I want to do. I.
yeah,
So my
yeah,
question is, how do you, how do I feel like I'm missing something because of my spiritual practice, actually,
yeah.
or
No,
because
I
of
know exactly what you're talking about.
my attachment to the good feeling. I mean, because it makes me feel so good. So, not that
Yeah,
I'm good, but it makes me, I have pleasurable experience from it.
yeah.
Okay, that's the end of my, I don't know if I asked the question. Did I ask a question?
I understand perfectly. So, as people on the path, as we discover virtue, as I said, and we realize the benefit virtue brings, then we enjoy ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with this, but it is the path to the God realm if we stay self-satisfied, if we stay in this kind of my pleasure, my practice, my path, my attainment, right? This is a very dangerous and common and normal part of the path. So remember that everything in the Dharma, with the exception of resting in the nature of mind, is a skillful means. So when we become too attached to bliss, to spiritual experiences, typically we need to focus more on renunciation and compassion. We need to think more about impermanence. We need to think more about death. We need to think more about the suffering of sentient beings and spend more time. We kind of need to bring ourselves down a little bit, right? So the gods are self-satisfied, right? They're in pleasure to pleasure, and they're ignoring the suffering of the lower realms. This is what keeps them in this feeling of separateness, this I, right? Which leads to long, long periods of pleasure, followed by a horrific fall to the lower realms because the karma burns out eventually that kept them up there, but they didn't cultivate bodhicitta. So they kept themselves separated from every other sentient being. So we need to get ourselves into the lower realms. We need to really commit ourselves to the lower realms and think about them and get really feel what they must be feeling. And if you can't go to like the hell realms or the hungry ghost realms, like that doesn't work for you, then just think about the homeless people, the drug addicts, the people losing their children, war, the worst. Spend time in it, and but the opposite can be true too, right? If we spend all our time in the suffering, and we get a strong feeling of I because we're in the suffering and it's kind of like this depressive thing, then we need to focus more on the good qualities of the Buddhas and do offerings and move ourselves up into we this is a it's a little bit of a balancing act as we work with our skillful means. This is why none of these things actually culminate in liberation. Liberation happens through disengagement with karma, only through resting in the nature of mind. Totally and completely bringing karmic winds to a cease actually results in liberation. But this is why you have to have bodhicitta. And this is really what I learned this. It took me a long time to learn this. You think these highest teachings are so amazing and so profound, but there's a reason all the lamas are always talking about bodhicitta. What is bodhicitta? We really need to be thinking about the suffering of others.
Mhm.
If we're thinking about me and my path and my attainment and my practice, and that's all we're thinking about, then we are perpetuating samsara. We have to think everyone's suffering, everyone, all sentient beings, infinite sentient beings, not just humans, insects, other realms, bacteria, countless beings are unseen. We want to bring all of them with us. So we need to spend time every day thinking about the suffering of the sentient beings so that we don't forget and don't feel bad. Like all the merit that you're creating through this practice is still useful and beneficial and positive. It's just that we all tend to ignore bodhicitta because we're really self-fixated, right? Even when we discover the path, we're like, I'm going to go. And so that leaves us on the Hinayana path, really. No matter what level you're practicing on, even to the highest levels of Dzogchen, if you still only have the attitude of liberating yourself, then the most you could attain is something like a praktika Buddha, which is not a good thing. You don't want to attain this kind of lower level accomplishment where it's my realization. We want all sentient beings to go together, all sentient beings to be liberated. We can't leave them behind. Moment to moment, we can't leave them behind. So we need to bring sentient beings into our practice. So even if we're just praying to Amitabha to go to his Pure Land, we want to visualize that we're bringing all sentient beings with us. That's a bodhicitta is so important. We can't let that go for even a moment.
But isn't it true that there are no other sentient beings?
Well, at the point that there's no you, then there's no
Right.
sense.
But if I am not, then no one is.
Right.
Anyway, it's all I'm not trying to do a mental gymnastics here. It's really something that I struggle.
As long as we think about I, we need to think about others.
Thank you.
When
Perfect.
we when we're done thinking about I, then we won't need to think about others.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. We overestimate ourselves, right? I do all the time. Right? I always have to go back to the way of the Bodhisattva Mahayana level. I'm not a pure Dzogchenpa. I'm not there. If I was
Thank
there, I wouldn't be thinking about my realization at all. It wouldn't even be a thought. I wouldn't be thinking about my progress. Those kinds of words are all self-centered words. So it means I still need to think about others.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You bet. And thank you for your question. I've worked with that much myself. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank
Michael's
you.
got to say something about that.
Yes,
He
go.
wants to throw up. We've got to hear something about that.
The suffering of samsara is horrible, right, Michael?
That's
Well,
such a profound thing to say. Come on.
you're asking me what was behind that, Phil?
Yes.
Well, I'm tired of feeling bad within my experience of living. And as Damien laid out in so many ways, my reaction was to throw it out by vomiting. And
Yeah.
but when he said in the end, as he told Vivian, which I think she heard, it's all, I'm not satisfied. And so that's the underlying root that is feeling bad, and I want to vomit, and I want a difference. I want it different than it is. And that now I'm 80, and you'd think after 80 you'd realize that you thought about that way too many years and never found a way out of that bag. So vomiting seemed appropriate at that moment.
I tell you what, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas raised their palms like this to that kind of statement. One
Yeah.
moment of genuine renunciation like that is rare. When you
Yeah.
really feel it, like, I'm sick of this. That's the best feeling you could have. That's what drove the Buddha, right? Like he had this perfect condition in this princely palace, and then he saw those sufferings and he thought, how can I enjoy myself? That feeling of renunciation started the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Michael. It is profound. To have genuine renunciation is rare because that's the thing we all kind of like samsara, right? Like if we're honest, we still like it.
I'm not sure. Phil, thank you for your love, by the way. But I wouldn't call it genuine renunciation, Damien, because it still had about me. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to be free, and I hadn't sat with that enough to move it to a purer place like you're talking.
But just the recognition
Sure,
that
sure, sure,
you've had enough, it is the whole spur that gets you going.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let's dedicate the merit. Thank you, everybody. Love you all. Thank you so much. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, having defeated the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. Thank you so much for your participation and engagement. Really appreciate it so much. Thank you for being here every week. I really have enjoyed engaging with this practice. Welcome to Peter. Thank you for coming. Hope to see you all again next week. Please feel free to reach out. And I will send the recording and notes as soon as I can.
You can keep
Marco,
the
you sure?
you can keep the vomit on YouTube if you want, Damien. No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think it'll help other people. That's
I'm
wonderful.
not, I'm not
Oh,
sure.
that's just a link to a Rolling Stones, just a little musical support for what we've been talking about.
Okay, so feel free to click it before I close that out.
Yeah, people will know that song.
How to kill
Thank
all
you.
mosquitoes in the air.
Okay, got it.
All right, good night, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
I thank
Bye.
you all.
And